I want to welcome you all to our meeting tonight. We have a really exciting meeting plan for you all, a cloud-based mixing platform for acoustic simulation and headphone virtualization by JJ Johnston, Jim Rondinelli, and Paul Hubert, who will be our presenters. I have a quick announcement in terms of technical considerations. One thing that we really like everybody to do at our meetings is to use your full name in Zoom. If you're on a Windows PC, if you look at your video window, you can click on the three little dots at the top right corner and choose to rename. I think it may be similar on a Mac system as well, but if you could, please rename and use your full name for our meetings. While the meeting is going and the presentation is going on, we'd like to ask that each of you please mute your microphones. In addition, we will be treated to some really cool audio demonstrations today. And in order to fully experience these, you'll get the best results by wearing headphones. So if you're wearing headphones today, that should be great. But do keep in mind that some systems like iPads and other devices that we've tested have a mono output sound in Zoom. And I don't think that there's any way for us to get around that. So please keep in mind that if you're not hearing some of the spatial information from the demos, that may be why.
Not the pros. Excuse me, Greg,
Okay.
not the pros. The pros are four channel.
Okay. All right. And so, yeah, just keep in mind that you may enjoy or better experience some of the demos tonight on headphones. Following the meeting, we'll have some time for everybody to give some brief intros after we're done, after the meeting concludes. And so if you'd like to stick around and socialize for a little bit when we're done, that would be great. We'd love to learn more about you and what you're up to with a brief intro at the end. I hadn't planned on it, but Dan, I'm now remembering Dan Mortensen we're lucky to have Dan here. And Dan, did you want to say anything about the Tiny Tea Time topics, events that you've been hosting?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Greg. We do this thing every Saturday at 3:30 Seattle time, Pacific time, where we talk about something that somebody wants to talk about and present a topic. This week, oh God, I wasn't ready for this.
Oh, by the way, Dan, we can't see your video.
Oh, really? Well, sorry. I got it. It's on. But anyway, I guess you'll just have to listen to me, unfortunately.
Dan, do
So,
you have one of those little flaps over the camera lens maybe that's down?
Oh, I wonder.
You know, some
Bingo.
of those. There we go.
There he
Yeah.
is. Welcome, Dan.
Geez, you guys didn't say anything when we were testing everything. I guess you figured
There
you
was a lot
were
going
better
on.
off.
We had bigger fish to fry, Dan.
Yeah. So this Saturday, a guy from Texas and New York simultaneously, whose name I'm totally spacing, Gary or somebody can help me maybe, who does acoustic recording, meaning that he has a cylinder recorder with two horns going into it, and he records bands playing of music of the time when that was done. And there's a bunch of videos that I can send you a link if you want. I'll put it in the chat later. And that's going to be one presentation. And then the other one is going to be about a SMPTE standard that was for surround, Gary, is that right? I can't quite figure out what it is. Rod Evanson is going to talk about the SMPTE standard, which existed and he was involved with, but it was screwed up and it got withdrawn. So he's going to talk about that. And it's fun and free. And if you want to come to it, send me something, send me a private message in the chat and I'll send you the Zoom link. And there's some real smart people there and it's fun to listen to them talk. So Saturdays at 3:30 p.m. Seattle time, and I open the doors at 3 so we can sort out stuff. Okay, thanks, Greg.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, we really appreciate that ongoing cool initiative and activity that Dan's been doing for quite some time. So thank you, Dan. At this point in time, I'd like to turn the time over to Dave Tosti Lane, who will be helping us out tonight with some section business. It is June, where each year our section has an election. And so I'm going to turn the time over to Dave Tosti Lane, who will be helping us with the election today.
Good evening. Dave Tosti Lane here. I'm a lifetime AES member at large of the PNW AES committee. So I've been asked by the nomination committee to conduct the election for officers and committee members this year. Our process is not super complicated, but the virtual nature of the meeting adds a couple of quirks along the way. Our bylaws specify that you must be a PNW AES member, either full or associate, to take part in the election. Student members may not vote. We require a quorum of a minimum of 15 members to hold an election. I suspect we're going to have that no problem tonight. And at this time, we have 4 open officer slots and 4 nominations, and 5 open committee slots and 5 nominations. So if we have a quorum and there are no further nominations, we may be able to shorten the process using an election by acclamation. More on that later if it turns out that way. At this point, I would like to ask all present members of the Pacific Northwest section of AES to please use the Zoom chat function to send a private chat message to Greg Dixon, who's at the top of the list on the private list, the current chair. And note if you are a student member as well, so that we can figure out if we have a quorum. And Greg's going to be working through those messages and confirm for us if we have the required quorum of 15 AES Pacific Northwest voting members. So if you're an eligible member, please send that private chat message now to Greg Dixon. And while that's happening, I'm going to share my screen here and put up a description of the committee responsibilities and read a list of the current nominations. So give me a second to do the share screen here. That should be here.
We've already reached over 15.
Terrific. Okay, so hopefully you see my share screen up now with the duties of the committee. Great. Let me move this little thing out of the way so it doesn't cover up my script. Okay. Pretty straightforward, really. We have 10 committee slots total. We elect them for 2-year terms on even odd years, usually arranged so there's some overlap. This year, we're electing 5 positions. Committee members attend all meetings of the committee and section where possible, assist the officers in running the section, and provide support for any meetings and events. Each committee member is generally expected to take on at least 1 meeting session a year, planning and facilitating the meeting as meeting coordinator. This is a pretty remarkable group of people, and serving on the committee is generally a pleasure. For more details about the duties of the section officers, you can go to the link that's at the bottom of that little page there. It's also available on our website. So I'm going to slide this down here and bring up the list of candidates here. So here is our current slate. For chair, Greg Dixon, who is the current chair seeking re-election. Vice chair, Bob Smith, current vice chair seeking re-election. Secretary, Gary Louie, current secretary seeking re-election. And treasurer, Lawrence Swedler, current treasurer seeking re-election. I feel like I'm a little repetitive there. We have 5 committee positions and 5 candidates. Jess Berg, live and recording engineer with extensive experiences in touring house sound and recording industry, seeking a first term. Dr. Angela Dane, musician, author, educator, and owner-operator of the local drum studio Atrocity Drums. Dr. Dane is a recent presenter for our section and seeking the first term. Micah Hayes, assistant professor of music technology and director of music production at Seattle Pacific University, a composer, recording engineer seeking first term. Dr. Michael Metesky, PNW AES member for over 20 years, owner and operator of Opus 4 Studios, and current program committee member seeking re-election. And Dan Mortensen, who you heard from a minute ago, president of Dan Sound Inc., specializing in live sound reinforcement. Dan is a current committee member, past chair, past vice chair, and conducts the tea time topics on Zoom. Dan is seeking re-election, and he says he's found 30 years of participation is not nearly enough. Okay, at this time, I would like to open the floor to any additional nominations. In order to be added to this slate, a candidate must be nominated and seconded by a Pacific Northwest AES member. Nomination may be by voice, but please also send a chat message in case we don't hear you. And just as a note, only AES members are eligible to serve as committee members or officers, although one can join or renew membership after being elected if necessary. So, do we have any motions for nomination?
Move to close nominations.
Okay, do we have a second?
Seconded.
Second.
Okay. And we don't need to vote on that one, I don't think. So we will close the nominations.
I think you should vote on it, actually.
Okay. And how do we do that?
Voice.
Ask if anybody's opposed.
Oh yeah, of course. Hang on a minute. I actually have that all set up here. I just need to do that. Give me a second. Okay, since there are no additional nominations and we have exactly one candidate for each open position, we have the opportunity to proceed by acclaim if there is no objection. So at this point, I would like to ask if any member of the Pacific Northwest AES objects to conducting an election by acclaim. And hearing nothing, and I assume someone will let me know if something comes up in the chat, then we need to call for a motion to proceed with election by acclaim. So the same drill, I need a motion and a second for proceeding with the motion with election by acclaim.
I move.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Hearing, let's see. I think I mixed this up, and I should have said the bit about whether we have an objection after doing that. So I'll just run through that again. Do we have any objections? Give that a moment. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to declare the slate of candidates elected by the quorum present by acclaim, and congratulations to the new officers and committee members. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn things back over to Greg.
Okay, thank you so much, Dave. At this point in time, we will begin the start of the presentation. And I'd like to start by introducing Jim Rondinelli, who will be functioning as our moderator tonight and working with the panelists. So I should say that if you have questions for the panelists, as I mentioned, we'd like you to mute your microphones, but this is an interactive event. And so if you have any questions that come up along the way, please type them into the chat, and then Jim, our moderator, will forward those questions to the panel. At this time, I'm going to introduce Jim. So Jim Rondinelli has dozens of engineering and producer credits to his name, including projects with Wilco, Weezer, Everclear, and the Jayhawks, among a panoply of 1990s alt-rock hitmakers. His work on Matthew Sweet's landmark release, Girlfriend, won numerous awards, including a place on Mix Magazine's top 25 best sounding records of all time. And Jim doesn't know this, but I've Been Waiting, a track on that record, is one of my favorite songs, period. It's just a fantastic song. So amazing work, Jim. As a producer, he's the recipient of Australian ARIA Awards and Canadian Juno Awards. Jim transitioned to a notable career in music tech and content licensing, leading business development at mp3.com before becoming the first global head of digital for major music publisher Warner Chappell. He joined Immersion Networks in 2018 as Chief Operating Officer after leading content relations, reporting, and licensing for music subscription pioneer RDO. Turn the time over to Jim. Thank you, Jim.
Jim, you're muted.
That was probably the best thing I said all night. But anyway, thank you for the great introduction, Greg. And I'll be happy to share stories with you about that particular song. There are lots of them. But anyway, I should move on. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. We're here to introduce you to work that we've been doing at Immersion Networks on MixCubed, the world's first dedicated cloud-based service for creating fully immersive next-generation audio content. I'm joined by my two very esteemed colleagues, JJ Johnston and Paul Hubert. Let me tell you a little bit about those two before turning over to JJ. I'm going to start with Paul. So and I should explain a little of my background with the company. About 5 years ago, my former general counsel, or 6 years ago now, my former general counsel at Warner Music, at Warner Chappell, Ed Pearson, who today looks after Macklemore, and Ryan Lewis and the Head and the Heart and a bunch of other bands here in Seattle, called and said, I just met these guys. They're really nice. They're really interesting. But it's really interesting because they were using a lot of words and I couldn't understand their jargon at all. Could you help me figure this thing out? And as an aside, I have a feeling you'll hit it off with these guys. And I met with Paul and JJ, and I was so stunned by the early stages of development of this place, Immersion Networks, that I made the decision to quit what I was doing, drop a consulting practice, and move my whole family up here to the Pacific Northwest, and have been delighted ever since. We're working on audio technologies that people couldn't even conceive of a few years ago, and we're going to be talking about one of those in particular, MixCubed, tonight. So back to Paul. Paul is the first person I ever met who got hired as a teenager by Apple directly by Steve Jobs. After a long career at Apple, extending through his teens and into his early 20s, he ejected and pursued his own passions in creating and recording music. He's a very successful mastering engineer who literally did every single that came through Warner Brothers Records for radio as a mastering engineer, in addition to the archival recordings of the Russian National Symphony, which includes little gems like Tchaikovsky doing Tchaikovsky. Or Shostakovich doing Shostakovich, I think was the better one. I think Tchaikovsky was well dead and gone by the time the masters got recorded. Anyway, so that's just a little bit about Paul. Paul also had a company called Neural Audio, where JJ worked as well, where they pioneered all types of, well, first of all, one of the things they pioneered was the first use of artificial intelligence and neural networks for audio processing, which they were doing back in 15, 20 years ago. JJ, I can't do enough justice to JJ's experience. JJ is truly one of the leaders and innovators and pioneers in digital audio, and particularly in perceptual audio research. Every day that I have with JJ feels like a gift. I come away either smarter or laughing harder than I did when I went to the office every day. It's a real gift. It's a real gift to have him as a colleague. After a long career at AT&T's Bell Labs, JJ came out to the PNW to work for Microsoft. He also worked at Neural with Paul. He's considered to be the chief architect and godfather of AAC, was a contributor to MP3, recently won yet another Lifetime Achievement Award. How many Lifetime Achievement Awards can you get? Ask JJ. There's probably more coming. Anyway, so that's a little bit about JJ. And with that introduction, I want to turn it over to JJ to hit the technical aspects of what we're going to be showing you today. So JJ, take it away.
Okay. Am I coming up properly now? Okay. So Paul, if you will please put up the slide deck. Paul, slide deck.
Paul, what are you doing? Paul.
Well, I'll freewheel for a minute here then while Jim
Stand
goes over.
by. Yep.
While Jim goes and talks. Yes. Strangely enough, I'm not in Alaska despite my background, even though I wish I was. I'm not going to really do much in the way of technical discussion this time. It really wouldn't be very easy to do because it would take many hours and quite a well, we'd have to spend a week on perception, a week on signal processing, and then maybe have to go into the math. But what we're talking about today is the key to it is it's an integrated application that carries the information. There we go. Open the first slide. Thank you. Open the first slide. There we, okay. Basically it's a cloud-based platform so that the person who owns it doesn't have to own equipment and have a whole bunch of computer facilities in their building. Okay, go to the first slide. Next slide, please. Well, we call it MixCubed. And what it is a web-based method. It basically uses graphics to create your immersive content. We do this by integrating the acoustic simulation and headphone virtualization for our first version. It is also possible to arrange this for other outputs, but I'm not going to talk about that today. And this, if you've followed any of the tutorials I've given, it probably covers every tutorial I've given from sampling theorem all the way up to spatial perception. So if you want to know how, I'm not going to tell you how it works today, but if you want to know the basics behind it, that's it. Okay, go to the next slide, please. Like I said, it's not a technical talk. This would be hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of technical talk, and probably would have to go back and write a tutorial too. But the point is it's all integrated. It handles angle, distance, pretty much, and a number of other things that in the acoustic environment you don't usually think about, and leaves you in control of how you present the sound. You can put it anywhere in the sound field, front, back, whatever, and you can adjust the distance, which is something that's unusual. This is not a pan pot. You can't do anything like this with the pan pot. And for instance, there's nothing keeping you from putting something right in the middle. We have all the usual mix controls, but kind of localization anywhere in the plane for sound field for headphones. We can move it from at your nose or even in your head to way, 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 way out there. And we can actually animate location. So if you want something moving around, you can move it around without any real difficulty and without glitches and without clicks. And I mean, if you move it really fast, you might get a little bit of Doppler, but you should get a little bit of Doppler if you move it fast. And this actually simulates the acoustics. It includes the time delay, the amplitude, direct to reverberant ratio, and a whole bunch of other things. It's more than just changing gain and adjusting more in the left channel, more in the right channel. The acoustic environment and other things are automatic. They're also applied to the headphone virtualization. The ability to integrate that instead of doing one thing and then doing the headphone virtualization later means you can do a lot better job of virtualization. So next, please. Okay, this shows you the screen. Is there any way to blow that up? Just get that one slide on screen because it's really hard to see here. Okay, well, maybe not.
So Paul, I think if you move from presenter mode to presentation in view,
yeah,
you'll get that.
Yeah, this is PowerPoint presentation mode.
There you go.
Okay, so this as you're seeing, basically this has a whole bunch of sources. I don't know if we're going to play this one for you tonight, but this shows where the whole bunch of sources, you can give them tags, you can put them in different places. And basically you lay your signal out wherever you want it. And if you go to the next slide now, you have what you expect in the bottom, which is basically a virtual mixing board. So you can set levels, you can adjust, you can adjust mains. This is all set up right now for headphones, but it's possible to set it up for other things in the future. And so basically, I'm going to give way to Paul now and let Paul show you actually how to use this. So, Paul, it's yours.
All right, excellent. Thank you, JJ. I'm super excited to share all this with all of you. So very many familiar faces out there, but I thought I'd start off with giving you guys a little bit of a background of Immersion Networks and a little bit of our history. So many of you don't know much about us, but many of you in the Northwest have been out here to our labs. So I'll start off with a little bit of an intro about us and then get into some of the fun stuff we're doing here. Let me get my screen share going. So I think this mode. So this is our neat logo. Anyway, if you see that, it looks familiar. What I'm going to go over here is, are you still on? I'm on your page, sorry. That one. All right. Which, sorry, I'm showing the wrong. Am I showing the correct? A brief history should be up now.
I think, yes, you got it.
Excellent. All right. So I'm going to go through just a little bit about the facilities we have in Redmond. We call them the labs. I'll talk about some reference speakers, spatial microphone we have also, then we'll get into the spatial mixing tools. I will start off with, this is where we were as an empty space in 2015. This is our location for our 3 reference rooms and listening rooms and test rooms. We did quite a bit of wonderful construction in this nice high bay warehouse in Redmond, only a stone throw from
You need to move down in the slides.
Am I not moving on the slides?
No.
So which slide am I on?
You're on a brief history.
Okay. Hang on, let me share. You see that now? So
yes,
the empty space that we have, excellent.
Now you have the space.
Is that helpful?
Yeah.
All right. So now you guys see the empty room? We're going to test audio here. No.
Well, this is what the room looks like when before we start.
Well, this is the big
Yeah,
empty room.
It's working, Paul. We're
Okay.
hearing it.
Great. And the reverb in here is about 6 seconds. Hey! The noise floor is just under 20 dB.
That's broadband too, not A-Weight.
All right, and now the next thing we did over here is lots of room treatment to that. So we end up making it lots of insulation in between, room within the room, lots of airspace, a bunch of things, but we're able to tune the rooms really, really well down to be free field rooms. So there's really no specific color in the rooms, and these are nice size rooms, so we can get down pretty low. So we have 3 rooms of various different sizes, but that was the biggest of the 3. The next one is almost the same size, so it's a little bit narrower. And here is a shot of what it looks like when it's all finished. As you can see, the console in the middle is actually one of our hardware-based control systems, which we've been working on for many years. And as COVID hit, supplies of computers and chips and many things were very difficult to get. And we kind of made a pivot to go look at how can we deliver this another way than expensive hardware. So we decided to focus our efforts on the cloud, where we can have infinite computing power, basically. And as the system works is that you upload tracks to the cloud, and you're able to move them around in space, and you're listening back to a uncompressed or a lossless stream coming back to you that's just a stereo stream. So you're able to listen and monitor what's coming back. So the only latency in the system is the stream coming back, but what you're doing is working on the same hardware that's been optimized for cloud processing. So we're able to be very efficient with millions of cores of processing, but ultimately we think that we can have a lot of people working all at the same time, and no one will never have any interruptions from one side or the other. So next little shot here, got our chief scientist working there on some speakers. We did make our own reference speakers for all of our listening. Couldn't really find anything in the market that we found was flat or really could do justice when we're doing really critical listening tests for our codec that we're designing.
And there's a little bit of issues there also about the time domain performance of a lot of loudspeakers. So we fixed that.
Yeah, well, this is something that we generally aren't talking about, but since one of the demos I'm playing actually uses it, I thought I'd at least give you some visual aid to as I just discuss what it's about and things. But we did also make a immersive microphone. I don't know, JJ, we want to give a quick overview of what it is?
Well, basically, it's a way to capture inside in the plane, capture the actual audio, the actual auditory cues that your ear is going to detect. So you put it somewhere where it sounds good to you. When you use this mic, it's a little bit strange because you don't put it up in front of the instrument unless you want the instrument in your nose. But this is, for instance, really good capturing various kinds of acoustics. You just have to use it. When you use it, you just have to make sure you like the acoustics you're capturing.
Excellent, thank you. Here is our start into the tools. So currently this is using MixCubed with something that I uploaded from my computer, and I'm actually editing it, moving it around on an iPad. So one thing nice about projects in the cloud is I can plug in a set of headphones to my iPad, move stuff around, and it automatically saves things all the time. So I can go back to my studio, I can go back anywhere, and obviously later on we can talk about sharing and collaboration, which is a big part of the entire vision of all of this stuff. This is actually our cloud. So if you think of there's rows and rows and rows of this stuff, we don't really worry about the processing power. So we did not compromise the quality of the engine and things that we're doing. Early on, when our engineers were looking at, we had our first really advanced model running on a machine, and we were trying to see what hardware we could put this on, whether it's going to be a bunch of CPUs with multi-core processors or maybe something optimized for GPUs and things. We looked at DSP as one of the options, and it was clearly the wrong answer, as we could run basically 2 channels of audio on an octo at 48 kilohertz. So it would take up all 8 DSP to run 2 channels of our earlier engine. And I could say it's only gotten more advanced since then. That was several years ago. And we decided to go down to a multi-core processor that we can control a lot more of what's going on with that stuff. And we can also bring it to the cloud. One of the things I'm about to share is, so this is a session that we did with wonderful Wynton Marsalis and the Young All-Stars of Jazz in New York, one of our test facilities that we've been working with for several months. And we have a microphone there, and we also come back and mix the close mics in with the stage position of where they are on stage. So as you can see, this is a little bit to the left of where the immersive mic is. It's actually a little bit to the right of this. So over here, when I go to the stage positions, you see that the listening position is here at the tip of the V, and there I've mapped the overhead view of where everything maps out on the stage. I'm going to go over here, and hopefully we'll be able to hear stereo out of this, and I'll play you this session from here. I'll skip to...
I should just take a second to warn that some users on Apple and iOS devices over Zoom may only hear a mono signal. That's not us. It's our friends at Apple.
Yeah, everything I'm going to play here will have demos available of this thing. We'll fill them in so you could hear them on YouTube correctly. Also, there'll be some links to our website where you can hear this stuff. This one currently is available to stream on YouTube. There's a 2-minute clip of it on there. But for those
Clarity
who
in
haven't
every
heard
song.
There
We're
it is.
rehearsing, we're discussing the harmonic progression of this piece. It's
it,
entitled
hopefully we have audio now.
Reflections. We hope you enjoy it.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. And it's stereo?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. Well, on to a little bit more information.
This is a piece by Thelonious Monk.
So here's stuff if anyone needs to get some information about this directly. I'll come back to this title later on, but here's a couple websites for more information on our stuff. And I will move on to sharing the tool.
Yeah, one of the things I just want to point out as Paul pulls up the tool is that everything that you're hearing now, you'll be able to hear even over the crappy codec that's in use on YouTube. And what the team here has done is unlocked a way to deliver three-dimensional immersive audio through headphones, but still able to execute the delivery of the content over standard codecs, which are far from optimized for multi-channel immersive content.
All right, thank you, Jim. All right, so we should be seeing the dashboard here. So this is what happens as you open up a session. You come into this section here. And this is basically my projects that I'm working on at the time. So I'm going to start off with a very simple thing, which opens up. So this is running off of the cloud. All the stuff is in the cloud right now. And I have a sound here. So this is known as our sound stage. Sound stage, I can zoom out. I can get pretty far. Up here in the right-hand corner, you will see basically the block, the grid that you're on. Tells you the distances of each one of those blocks. As I zoom in, now it's gone into these blocks represent a meter. Now as I zoom in, these represent 50 centimeters. As we move back out, you can also right-click and it will reset the frame to wherever your distance is. That's kind of natural. So if I move this really far away, I can reframe this by right-clicking or double-clicking on that, and it will automatically recenter everything with a reset view on this. So I can take this sound here, and I can start off with it up in front of us, and I can hit play. Hopefully we will hear. We just confirm we have audio, somebody?
Yep, we do.
Excellent. So now I'm going to move this around. Now I'm in a mode that's over here. If I go to the left-hand menu, I can go in here to settings. And there's multiple settings for this. This is called interactive view, which this lets you preview what you move around and listen to it. So if you're looking to find the right spot, it lets you move things live as it's playing. Once you start writing our automation, or if you write in keyframe automation into this, you cannot move things once they already have locked into position. But I can also go back into, if I have, maybe I have some internet connections that aren't so great or things like that. This does require a good, nice, clean internet connection. We go to static mode if you do not have this. So now if I take something, I can move it to this position, I can hit play, I can move anywhere in the timeline here. I can hit play, but it will only let me play this. I can't actually move this sound anymore. Now it's stuck in that position, but that requires a lot less bandwidth to do that type of stuff. There's not a two-way communication, so people that don't have the best internet connections or maybe get sketchy stuff can still get a very clean sound. They just can't move things around unless they automate them directly. So I'm going to open up a new feature here, which is our keyframe automation tool. Over here, this little button on the bottom left-hand corner here, I'm going to enable a position. Now, as I move in the timeline, I'm going to change that position to over here. And if I move in the timeline again, I'm going to move it here. And as I continue, you can see that it's dropping new keyframes every time I move something. So as I move in the timeline, I can get really close, and then I can start pulling away with that same sound. So I'll make a big jump there. But now when I hit play, it'll automatically place that stuff for me. And you can do that for any channel. Jim, do you have any questions at this stage?
We've had a lot of questions about the mics, which we've been filling in the chat. And just to reiterate for the benefit of all, no, those are not standard microphones. They are proprietary capsule design that came out of the team here at Immersion. They do not use anything recognizable as a traditional polarity pattern. Those are kind of the highlights of the microfilm for now. Can you change the acceleration of the sound source between positions? And that's easily accomplished by dropping keyframes at different rates. So Paul, maybe you could demonstrate that.
Yeah, so if let's say I go over here and I want to make this next move really quick, I'm going to jump this guy over here. If you notice, I'm moving a very small amount. I can jump over here. This might sound really weird, but you know, if somebody asks, we will show you. So now when I start this playback, you'll see this jump. And you will notice that the way that it moves, so when I position something here and then I position something here, it will stay the same distance. So it's a radial move. So if you want to move closer, you kind of have to force it inward. So if I was to take a position here and I want to move in, it will take that automation point and obviously just make the closest path towards it. But if I want to go around something over here, if I want to move from so this over here on the right, I can actually move to each keyframe automatically through the timeline. So if I want to go over here, if I also want to erase this one, I can just click on that. And now if I move to a different position, it'll write the new one in there. But if I want to...
and I should just add, this is the premiere tonight. You are the first people outside of this facility to see MixCubed running with its automation, which will be up in the cloud very, very shortly.
Yeah, many of you that have played with the beta so far have been waiting for this, and I'm showcasing it here. It's going to be up fairly soon. We'll probably... But this
just a quick question, Paul. Could you pull up the? Could you open up the fader tray, please?
Sure. It's not very exciting. Not very exciting with one thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I should just ask, Katie is also asking if you can do this kind of automation in the Z plane as well, and I will answer that forthcoming.
Yes. If you look at this control surface over here, since I only have one channel, I don't need to have a multi-channel tray up at this point. But over here, there is two faders on the left side. One, if you look up here in very small letters, it says direct on this one to the left. On the one to the right, you get indirect. Now, one of the unique things about this is they're coupled together. So if I do automation, actually I'm in keyframe mode. I'm not gonna write gain right here. So if I was to write a gain change in this, I would just start the keyframing there, and I can automate gain as well. You can also scroll to the next keyframe that you did for motion and add gain if you want. But you can also change the direct and indirect difference. So if I make this, and many of the early people that were working on this they kind of want to understand what's the difference between direct and indirect, and why do we label it something that we haven't heard of before, really in a tool. So as we move sounds around, the farther away you get from the listener, the more, the less of the direct sound you're going to get. It's actually it's typically keeping the same amount of indirect sound, but the direct sound is going to get quieter as you move farther away. It's just how things work. I don't know if JJ, do you want to comment in on for a second on that? Maybe not.
I think I'll decline. Sorry, I had to unmute.
Okay.
I think I'll decline. I'm busy answering questions in chat.
Okay.
I think I will decline for the minute because there are some issues involving Chris with that.
Okay, no problem. So I will, I'll demonstrate how this works on there. So if you are to, let me pull up something musical. It's a little easier to hear, and I'll also change the room here. So I will go into a full song here. Unfortunately, I can't hear what I'm doing, so you guys will have to let me know.
Killer snare.
Killer
Just
snare. All right, so I'm gonna have a vocal here. I'm just gonna solo. So now I have a full multi-track, and you notice there's a few different things about these. So each sound, as you bring it in to the session, you can change the properties up here by right-clicking on this, and you can change the color, you can change the name. So obviously this lead vocal TDA 202 doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm just gonna say lead vocal, and that's what I'll see as I look over here in the panel also, and I pull into the multi-track side. So if I want to slide, since I obviously have more than I can see on the screen here, I have to scroll to the right. There's a scroll bar at the bottom. I can move this lead vocal, I can change the order, I can move it to the left, I can move it back to where it was, I can arrange this however I want to look. I can also automate levels within the loudness here, or I can do the same thing over here with loudness level over here. Now I can change the direct and indirect ratio, and now this session has a different room in it. So if I double click over here on this panel, over in this right hand section, you'll see a room setting. Now currently this is in a LA plate. We've got a starter set, as we say, of rooms to play with, and there'll be many more as we move on, and I'm really excited to share all that stuff. So we typically start off in a neutral space, and I will give you a quick listen to that with his voice. I'm going to put a little bit of a pre-delay on this just because it's fun. So I will solo this voice here, move to this in the timeline.
Candy skin, I'm melting in.
I'm going to get out of static preview mode so I can move this around. Back to interactive. A few other things about this settings. There's a preview buffer size. If you want less latency when you move things around and you have a really good internet connection, you can change this down to a small, which gives you 0.3 seconds. Medium is a 0.8 seconds. We can also move this meter panel over to the right side if you want to have this over here. You can also, so that's under the settings menu here. I will move that back onto the left. You can also turn it off, like if you're on a mobile device or something that screen real estate is a big deal. I'll move this back here. Also, you'll see this button down here at the bottom. It says Show Indirect on Mix Panel. Now when I open up my mix panel, I get the same direct and indirect things. And some of these you see that I've turned up the indirect. So maybe I want it to be exaggerated for the distance of where it is. And I'll explain that in just a minute here. So as I move this voice closer, it's not only going to get louder, it's going to get drier.
I'm melting in.
So I'll take it. So the next phrase he has is
Lost
going to be
in
more
those
distance. Now I'm in the
eyes.
neutral space, which doesn't have a lot of
Lost in
characteristics.
those eyes.
I'm going to do that same thing over here, but I'm going to put us in the LA plate, which is a lovely plate, one of my favorites.
LA live room, Paul, or LA plate?
It's LA plate. So, oh, actually, sorry, I selected the wrong one, but Jim was distracting me. All right, so here we go. So now I start him off.
Candy skin.
And again, as we move it closer, we're going to get it louder, but also drier.
Lost in those eyes. lost in those eyes.
Sure, Jim.
Yeah, Paul, I'd like to actually respond to a couple of the questions that have shown up in here. First of all, to Dan Mortenson's question, what makes a reverb space a New York space rather than an LA space? Generally, it's dirt and the presence of rats. Those are also available in settings. Katie Gray's been asking some great questions. Will you be able to design your own room? And I think, Katie, to answer that, you're going to have a degree of room models and manipulation and controls that are going to sort of recalibrate your understanding of what's possible with digital reverb. I mean, if you want to think about it this way, to do the kind of processing that we're doing here, you would need an array of Bercassities, right? Or you would need, dozens of Mac cores, and that's how deep and sophisticated the modeling that we're doing in the cloud is for this. And then finally, Jason McDonald asked, Paul, and I wondered if you could take this one. Can you import a Pro Tools session or a session from any other DAW, or does it require a manual upload of each WAV file? How does this incorporate into the typical mixing workflow? And that's a great question.
Yeah,
Jason.
great
Thank
question. So as we try to keep this universal, and when we looked at there's many DAWs out there, and the simplest way for us to look at this as a new category. This is really a new stage that you really can't do any of this stuff in your DAW. We knew we couldn't get the algorithms to run within the structure of the plugins. So you do have to export your tracks basically as stems or mono tracks and import them. And once they're in the cloud, you can play with them anywhere, but you do have to export them. We do support everything from 44.1 16-bit all the way to 192 32-bit, WAVE, AIFF, FLAC. You can actually import compressed audio stuff, even though we highly discourage that from anybody, but some people, that's all they have if they want to play with stuff. But ultimately, you can bring any files you want into the session, and once they're in the cloud, they're there as long as you have a subscription. So
I just have to chip in here for a second and say that you should never, ever reprocess coded signals, please.
I agree,
Grumble.
obviously. But if if somebody's just trying to hear how it works and things like that, that's still fair, and obviously
and
you're
look,
not making
sometimes in hip hop world, it's not uncommon to get low res compressed tracks and samples in from our artists, and unfortunately that's a little bit of life. A couple of other questions. To Wayne Edwards, I'll take this directly. Can the tracks be stereo or multi-channel? Absolutely. Whatever you want to throw into the system, we are happy to receive. And then I think one of the questions we've been waiting for all night, and I want to address this a little bit here. So Christian Heilman asked, is there an Atmos output? And this is something that we think a little bit about here, because clearly Atmos has some traction in the market for what those guys are doing, and good on them for bringing attention to audio. If you think about it, audio has been sort of the ugly stepchild of technology if you compare the number of standards we've had since the dawn of the iPhone in audio versus video, right? We had the good fortune of having JJ's work to launch AAC with, but JJ did the math for that in the early 90s, right? And early to mid 90s, and pioneering work even decades before that, and that's the basis of AAC, which is still in use today. Meantime, video's gone through 263, 264, 265. We've gone from 525 to 1080p to 4K to 6K to 8K and beyond. So just in comparison, and this kind of goes back to the genesis of this company, there's been a deficit in the amount of research and engineering that's been placed in audio as of late, and that's one of the things that we tried to fix. Back to Christian's direct question on an Atmos output, the thing that we try to do is, the thing that makes us uncomfortable about what some of the other platforms are doing is their native output is a compressed file, and they're using a codec derived from JJ's work, which was not designed for multi-channel audio. and is extremely limiting. So there is a commercial reason to do that. At the same point in time, we just kind of like things sounding better, and we like giving people additional features and functionality. One other thing that I just want to mention to everybody to put a level set on all of this stuff is that in a lot of these other immersive audio formats and approaches that are out there, you're being asked as a studio owner or as an engineer to make a significant investment, CapEx investment in new gear. You're being asked to buy multi-channel speakers. You're being asked to buy new hardware. You're being asked to buy new plugins. We're introducing MixCubed to the market at $9.95 per month. To answer the question that came in from our esteemed guest from India, Suresh, this thing runs on any web-connected computer. Really, the gating factor is the quality of your connection, and that's a gating factor not for the performance of our system, but just for the latency to get a file back to your round trip. But we're talking about introducing this into the market at the price of a Spotify subscription. We're not asking you to make investments in pieces of hardware or tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, but we're trying to make immersive audio available to everybody everywhere, and improve the quality of audio for the world. So, forget I'm going to have to redesign my whole room when more than 2/3 of the listening in the world is now happening on headphones anyway. Let's start with formats that are optimized for that.
Hopefully I wasn't hogging up the screen the whole time. I have a couple points on top there, Jim. Certainly, the question for Atmos. There's a bunch of things that we can do in this platform that just are impossible to do. And I'm about to play you something that you can't do in any other system. And we look at how we're outputting this is set for stereo output. It can be listened to on speakers. It takes advantage of headphones, but the primary listening, vehicle out in the world is headphones by a large margin. And so today's listeners are, getting an incredible, chunk of the future by having something go directly into their ear canal. We don't have to sell them a bunch of speakers and things like that. But let me play this little thing. I did just a very simple sound effect background. I'll start off by just muting this thing over here, or soloing this. There's some wind playing for you.
You want to share again, Paul?
Yeah. Hang on a second. So. All right, so over here, the two things that are playing, and I've done some very simple automation. So this just moves around. It's just a stereo sound that I got from an online library. It's just a wind and so just very subtle movement of that with some wind chimes over on your left, the wind constantly kind of coming from the right. And you can move that around just for a subtle effect. But now when I move in something, as I say, you can't do this with Atmos, is you can't come in close to anything. So I'm going to take this sound here now that's automated to kind of zoom past you. Forward a little bit, and here's another thing that's impossible to do really on speakers, and that's get really close to somebody.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
Any more questions on that note?
I wonder if I can open up my mic and ask one. I noticed in the display some of those sound effects had these two things on the ends of them. Was that a stereo pair being moved around?
Correct. That's a stereo pair, and you can control the width. I'll show you real quick. Thank you for that question. So you're talking about this function here. This is stereo width from a stereo sound, and I can actually make it move this however I want. I can also automate that. So part of the, I will go ahead and write this again here and disable keying, and I will take this sound and I'll start it off really narrow. I'm going to take the same sound and put it wide. Or actually, I will start it off narrow, key over to about midway, and then expand it back out. I'll go back here. I need to automate these. All right, here we go. So I'll start there. Make that even wider. Go to the next key. I'll even shrink this down a little bit for a second. And then as this next key plays, I'll go back out to wide. Then bring it back in. So now when you hear that sequence, you can take that stereo field and expand it. All right.
Paul, Bob Smith asked a great question. A lot of the demos we've been doing tonight have been showing things behind people's head. Could you show us bringing a sound like the wake up sound, either front and center, or from straight up center, closer and closer to the listener?
You got it. Hang on a second here.
And Greg, the limit to the number of sound objects or files that can be individually spatialized and mixed is infinite as far as the cloud is concerned, but that is one place where we will eventually install limits in pricing tiers. For now, any contemporary size session is capable of support in the cloud.
All right, so.
Share the screen again, Paul.
All righty, thank you. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to zoom into the 1 meter view. I'm going to start off with this sound here. I'm going to key it there. I'm going to move about there. So this is a constant noise. It's actually a sound of soda cans, basically bubbles coming from a soda. An excellent, lovely test for things. And if we want to write it back farther away, I'll kind of zoom in and out. This isn't really far, so maybe I'll go a little bit further over here. Keeping it dead center. Maybe a little off to the side there. Side there. All right. to hear that again, or are we're good? This one's always fun to bring behind you, just on the general thing, because you can't see it. So I will take us past that last point and get some people's. Whoops, I don't want to swing it behind really quick. So I will erase this one here. I will start back here. And then let's have that move here.
And while Paul's setting that up, yes, Christian, faders and mutes are both automatable as well as stereo width and image position.
So now as we go around, fortunately, I can't hear what I'm doing, but hopefully it's working for everybody. Those are little fast moves for some of this stuff. But yes, so I can, if I wanted to go back to the beginning here and write automation for level, I just kick in this gain button here, and I just move this anywhere. I can move to the next keyframe, and I can turn this up a little bit. I can move to the next keyframe, turn it down a little bit. And you can obviously create your own keyframe anywhere you want if you wanted to bring that back down. And now if I wanted to really mute it down here, obviously this isn't going to be a great mix, but it gets pretty quiet. You can
getting thirsty.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's part of it.
So one of the things that's really powerful about this platform in particular is that it gives you not only the ability to create multiple outputs and different formats of audio via pull-down menus, but the speed that it helps the speed of mixing on this set of tools is incredible. As a mixer, one of the things that we all used to struggle with is the typical fight between conflicting sources in the low end, the bass drum, the 808, the bass guitar, and the bass synth all fighting for the same front and center position. There are two real interesting hallmarks of working on this platform. One is that if you take something with a lot of low frequency energy and pan it, you don't lose the low frequency energy as you pan it, but you can also immediately deconflict things, not by having to sidechain and compress the hell out of things or carve out EQ spaces, but simply by placing things in different spaces. It's incredibly easy to work with. And on that, I would like to perhaps hand the baton over for a few minutes to Steve Turnage, who has been working with us on some of these early demos. I know, Steve, you had some observations that you wanted to sort of share with the group about your experience of mixing content and the speed of production with the platform.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I've had a bunch of multi-track stems of a bunch of songs for a while, and I could have always put it up. Can you hear me okay? Am I good? All right. I could always put it up in a regular DAW, but it was sort of too much work. And also, I had a 2" 16 track just captured recently, and I've got all these files, but haven't had anything to do with it. When I got the beta notice from Paul, I said, well, I could use these things. And so you just literally grab the files, drag and drop, name them, and place them. The first thing I did was won't get fooled again. And it took me about 15 seconds to make the mix. And then I play, and it was like better than what I'd heard it before. And then you render, and the beautiful thing is it renders the piece, and you can download it as 9624, and with the normalization that doesn't crunch the spatialization that the Immersion's generated. And after going through and doing dozens of these, when I had to go back and do, I'm a mastering engineer. So when I had to go back and do regular mastering, it was like putting on lead boots. It was really, really slow as compared. It still worked. It still sounded great. But and as I was listening to the different mixes I had done in the MixCubed, I got a different vision because we hadn't had the automation up to this point. And so being able to hear each of these mono stems in the space in the room where they are is very educational and wonderful. And I think what we've got here is that the old world of tracking and then mixing and then mastering is we're sort of splitting it at the mixing part and making multi-tracks, mono multi-tracks that mono stems that will blend together appropriately. And I think that's where a lot of the audio education and learning and getting good at things is going to be there. Instead of finishing it off in the DAW, you bring it into the MixCubed session and place it where it is. And now with the automation, that's going to be a completely an additional dimension here, which is remarkable. And the results from just what I downloaded in the 9624 are just fine as far as mastering goes. So I wouldn't even want to crush those again in another mastering way. If I want to have it sound differently, I would bring it closer or farther away or change the stems that I have. And I think what this is really going to do is open the marketplace of not only the standard stereo mixes that we've always had, stereo mastered mixes, they'll still be there, but then also the spatial mixes are very interesting, which is what sort of like Apple's doing with the Atmos thing right now, trying to say this is very different than that and hear how it sounds. And that's what I've been able to hear in these. But the third release mechanism is actually releasing the stems. So because this is a subscription service, anybody can, most people probably won't be playing with it, but the people that want to have it as an audio video game will probably want to get some content. And that content is another mechanism that we can either sell or promote. And there's going to be 10,000 mixes of these things. And that's one of these things about sort of losing our preciousness. And the people that are good at it will probably be making their own remixes. So I'm totally thrilled by this. It's sort of changed my life in the last 2 months, actually, since I've been doing it. And so I'm happy to answer any questions from my experience. And Jim, other than that, is there anything? Steve, why don't you unmute there?
One quick question, Steve, just building on the mastering kind of thinking, did you just say you wouldn't go back and then master a track that you had already mixed in MixCubed?
Yes, it's like at the twilight of mastering, unfortunately, or fortunately, because we have the whole thing. The other thing that we've been working on this for years, actually, and we've been under NDA for years. And so being able to hear it in the world is so great. And Steve Ball has a cohort called Tiny Orchestral Moments. And we had one of Paul's microphones that we brought up to Ron Jones Sky Muse Studios and made 3 days of many recordings that broke down to 5, but we hadn't been able to really generate them. But with this, the way that we have it now, the 5 mics are just placed in the place, and it generates as if you're in the position of the microphone. And Steve has those available in the world now. Yeah, I'll let him post about that. The other thing is that I had a Zoom quad recorder in 2009 that I took into Tuning the Air, which is 12 guitarists, acoustic guitarists in a circle that you sit in the middle of and you hear it. So I placed that, and I hadn't really done anything besides just blend it together in the past. But I found that as well, and being able to put the quad just in for right around where the headphones are, and then render that, it worked great. You're in the space. So all of our old quad material is now easily generated. Hi, Sophie. In the world, and it's and Christian made me a mix of made me a split out of one of we're in a band together, and so he gave me mono stems and some room sound and different things, put it in, and I love the result. And we have 2,500 tracks that we haven't really released, and I'm sort of hoping that one of our release methods will be in Spatial, and this allows for that. And it also, again, hits the video game aspect of the subscription idea.
So anyway, Steve, Steve, I was just going to say thank you for that feedback really quick. And it's great to hear your perspective on what it's been like to work with the platform up to this point. You know, there have been a couple of questions that have flown into the board that I think you and Paul maybe want to spend a minute on. And Paul, let me kick this over to you. Mastering this versus mastering other formats, and what are the consequences of applying typical mastering techniques to this signal?
Great question, everybody. You know, I think that's obviously a big part of our workflow as actually getting stuff out is, relying on a great mastering engineer to help really kind of finalize the product and gel everything together. One of the really big problems with recent mastering trends in the last decade or couple decades is, making everything loud. And this outputs as a stereo output, so you have the ability to take this and master it however you want. You know, you really have to keep left and right channels, do the same thing on the left as the right. You can't really do anything different. You really don't want to add phase differences in there. So if you're playing with an EQ or doing anything, be very careful about what you're doing. But my philosophy on all of this is if it sounds good, it is good. And many mastering engineers will find that they can sculpt stuff however they want. They can do some things with dynamics, but you realize that you are changing the distance that someone intended. So if you have something that feels like it's supposed to be a meter away and you add an infinity to one compression on it, it's going to push it into your face. Now, that may be an effect somebody wants, but be very careful, generally is our advice on that. Now, we will provide a set of tools that will help normalize things set for services. So I will share my screen real quick here. So if we go back to a session here, I'm going to go pull in a full song here. So when I'm done with this mix, I'll play you this for a second here. This is a full, there isn't any movement in this, but this gives you a pretty rich idea of what you can do with space around here. I'll just zoom in here.
She's flowers and bloom, so beautiful, so beautiful. Take my breath away, beautiful. And oh, she's sunshine falling. And oh, she's sunshine falling.
So let's say I'm happy with that. I go ahead and stop here. Up in the top left-hand corner, you see render. That says, okay, there's this notify upon completion. I'll go ahead and render that. This takes me over to my renders, which I haven't done any on this account. So this will start off as my first thing here. As it's finished with this, there'll be a ability to, you can retitle it, you can do these other things, but you can see the progress bar moving here. I think I'll talk about mastering in a second, but when you're done with the render, you basically have the option, as you download it, you can download it in any format you want. You can do 9632, you could do 9624, 44.1, 48. We do an incredibly nice sample rate conversion on everything. Now we do operate everything in the cloud is at 9632-bit float. So we do up sample things that are not at that sample rate, and we do a very very nice job of that. And I must say, you know, as JJ would put, we don't, you're not going to hear a sample rate conversion in anything that we do. But when you're done with this, there's a little button that I'll show you once this is finished. So it's kind of boring to watch. So it's off in the background, running, you know, it's processing. It'll be done probably in about another minute or so, but it's actually rendering it out in super high resolution in the cloud, and then giving it the ability. There's a little button on there that says normalize loudness, and that little button does a perceptual loudness adjustment that does not change any dynamics. There's no dynamic range change within it, and it does actually set that for the window for most of the popular streaming services. So if you're familiar with putting things out to streaming services, they do a loudness thing with you know, certain LUFS settings. So this ties right into the average for Spotify, Apple, Tidal, you know, any of the companies that YouTube, all of them basically have a same range within a dB of each other. But this will put you right in that range without changing and adding any compression or changing your distance cues or anything.
Great, thank you for that answer. That's great, Paul.
So
there's a lot more here than meets the eye. You know, Immersion Networks, this is kind of the first leading edge of a whole series of products, you know, that you've seen that we've talked about today, but there's a lot more that we've been working on over the last few years here, including codecs that are extremely small that blow everything else that's in market out of the water, both in terms of audio quality and file size and general accuracy. That's another thing that we'll be talking about in the future. There have been some requests on future product features and releases. In general, it's our strategy to take a look and listen to the input that we're getting from our customers and our users, and those actively inform the pipeline of what we bring into market next. But we intend to be really responsive to the community and give people a fundamentally different and better way to perform all of these tasks. So you know, if we will build it, if you know, we see sufficient ask and need, and it's not against our thesis of making things sound better.
Yeah, I see a few more questions down here. I do want to jump back to that screen that we were all waiting for a little bit. So we're done. Now I come over here and hit the download button. I can pick. Right now, we only give you wave as the output, but you can say you want it to be 16-bit, 20-bit, or float 32. I'm going to say 24-bit, and this little button down here that I was mentioning before, this normalize loudness. If you don't have that selected, it's just going to leave it as your mix was alone. This one will put it basically to the right level for the major streaming services. Now, if you're doing...
And you have a lot of sample rates as well, so pull that one down too.
Correct. There's 44, 148, 88 to 96. But if you're doing classical music, or you're doing, you know, things, you'd probably don't want to bring those to the standards of the streaming companies, so leave those alone. But generally, most popular music, that will work really well. We're not going to do anything that needs 60 dB of dynamic range easily within that window. But we will have tools, so you'll be able to measure that stuff later on.
I will mention that we have our first couple of releases in market today. So we've been working with 19-time Grammy winner Sebastian Chris and his new label Rebelon Entertainment, which is distributed through the New Virgin group. They have 2 records out now where they've offered headphone-specific releases for Immersion, which are currently available both on Spotify and on Amazon. So you can search for that stuff as well. One of the artists is called Valet, and the other one is called Inti, I-N-T-I-E-Y, Vicente, V-I-C-E-N-T-E. And we can put some links hopefully up to that on the AES page later. We're excited to tell you that in addition to Wynton Marsalis now, who's referred to the microphone as the first time he's ever heard his horn come back off a recording in the way that it actually sounds to him when he plays, which you can't ask for a better compliment than that from a guy who really uses the room as an extension of his horn. We have a number of other key releases that'll be out in the third or fourth quarter. You'll see a lot more Ion content showing up soon, and I hope you enjoy it.
So I see a couple questions here. Steve Ball, you got a question on guidelines for release. We're actually working on that right now on just what we're going to brand this. Right now, a lot of people have just referred it to headphone mix and let people discover it on their own. But a lot of people are calling it MixCubed stuff, or M3 seems to be hitting a lot. So we should be able to have a metadata tag that goes into any of the services as whether we call it M3 or whatever the best name comes out of this. But, we're really early on this. Again, we're just in beta, and, I think we'll probably let the community decide what they want to call it. But
and it does sound good enough on speakers to know what's going on in the mix and the like. David Kate has been working on it. He was really surprised at how well it translated. And I had an evening where I just listened to my my directory of immersion renders, and it was nice on the speakers. And then I went out into back in headphones, and it's almost jarring how much the evolution happens between the two. But it's not like a thing that like binaural. It's not something that is hard to listen to on speakers. So the range is good.
yeah, we put a lot of effort into making sure that this is for headphones. I see there's a question on, for speakers. If you think of most of the music we've all mixed has always been done on speakers, and it's at completely the wrong angles for headphones. If you're sitting with 60-degree speakers in front of you and you're at the nice point in that triangle, you release it on headphones and now you're at 180 degrees and you've got no center depth. Everything's inside your head. This actually focuses you to have a sound stage, and you could put something at 180 degrees if you want. The sound stage is completely 360, and also we'll be talking about height on another edition of the AES Northwest chapter, probably.
Paul, you've recently done some forthcoming mixes. You've been working with some masters from some really, really well-known, popular multi-platinum artists. As you get those masters in, to get something that you, with your meticulous taste, are happy with, how long is it taking you to get something laid up?
Well, prior to automation, it would be very quick. That generally I'm happy if I get stems typically from an artist where they've already given you basically their mix. Here's your vocals on a stereo mix. Here's your drums on a stereo mix, and they're all stemmed out. So if you bring it back into Unity, into your DAW, that's the mix they represent. So when I get things like that, it's really easy to import and get it laid out however we want. I have a pretty good idea how they want it to sound. I'm hopefully getting a few things that are separated, things that don't have effects buried on them. Typically, if you're doing something, I like to have dry signals. Generally, mono is more powerful than stereo in some cases, but if you really want something that has a stereo effect, give it as a stereo stem. Those things I normally have a really good mix up within 15 minutes. Now, I can spend another hour on automation if I want to start getting really into the weeds and I like to do little tiny moves just to shake things up. I think if you think of your head is actually never still. Even if you think you're holding your head still, you're always making tiny movements and things like that. And the reverse of that is if you actually can take sound and move it just a little bit, it draws attention to the things. Now, something that JJ taught me a long time ago is you can really only pay attention to one thing at a time. So if you have dramatic moves going along, you don't have to waste a lot of time on lots of things zooming around and things like that. So when I showed that little wind demo, I only had one thing really moving. Everything else was stationary. That's the same way I kind of treat my mixes, as I have one dominant thing I want to get attention to. The rest of it I generally will set in the soundstage with maybe tiny movements just to make it kind of flutter or those things.
Well, that brings up something I was going to say quite a while ago, but I didn't want to interrupt, is that people asked how many stems or how many tracks can you put in? Unless they're things that blend together, you have to remember that even over a sound field, if you have more than 10 apparent sources, give or take 8 or 10 apparent sources that people can focus on one at a time, you're going to overwhelm them so much that it's just going to sound worse instead of better. So
Yeah, no,
this
that's
is
a
the case.
that's a really good point, JJ.
You don't want to put in 94 tracks. I mean, you can try that, but it's going to create a great amount of mud.
Well, JJ, I think probably part of the origin of the question is so often now we get tracks in. Those of us who are still doing a little mixing will get a track in from a client. I'll have in the Pro Tools session, it's like, oh my God, look at all, they've literally split everything out. There are literally dozens and dozens and dozens of tracks, and they're not submixed. So that could be
Right.
part of the origin of the question to address that.
Oh yeah,
workflow.
but this is
Or
where
the-
you group. This is where you group them and make a good blend. A good blend of each sub thing, and now you just put them all in different places. That's the way to do it. You can do 1 or 2 or 3 channels of those. You probably want at least 3 channels to make the location across those submixes good. But you just want to set that up, and then you want to move them around in the space. But you don't want them all zooming around in different ways, or your entire auditory system is going to go.
Exactly. Well, I get these things. One of the things that used to happen to me in my mixing days of way back is I would get lots of masters where the producer would not have comped any of their guitar solos or vocals, and they'd just send you everything, like as if they couldn't make a decision. And one producer who did that to great effect, Pierre Marchand, would sometimes literally deliver 72 or 96 tracks, not even knowing to himself what he wanted the arrangement to be until the end of the process. So the good news is, of course, you don't want to automate all those sources, but one of the beauties of using cloud computing is we can take all those inputs in to help you make your decisions later.
Yeah. If you can, and I haven't looked at the UI, but if we can group things so you can move things around as a whole, you can really make a lot of use of that, because you want to find the pleasing combinations for this set of tracks and that set of tracks and that set of tracks. And then you want to put them all into the whole.
Something else that's really important is the educational aspect of this. Is most people don't get to go into major studios and spend a lot of time getting things right. So with the subscription of this deal, pulling in whatever tracks, including your own rhythm tracks out of live or whatever, or even looped libraries, and being able to have the student, which we all are, especially right now, is because it's a brand new mechanism. There aren't really rules yet. It's sort of like when we went from mono to stereo, but even more from stereo to surround sound. The early surround sound exercises, some of them were horrible, with saxes and trumpets blaring from the back that startle you, and we had to sort of evolve how that comes. I think we're on the cusp of that, but at a vastly wider decentralized population as this happens. And I think we're going to be surprised at what can come out of this. And I'm looking forward to doing it. Actually, I figured out from doing this for the last 2 months, I figured out what I want to do when I grow up in the next 10 years is I would love to get the overflow of people that are making spatialized mixes to put out, because it's a pleasure well, first of all, to be able to solo something, like, for instance, if one would ever have Beatles multi-tracks, not that anyone does, but to be able to hear each of the instruments being played in this way, outside of the group. You know, there's a lot of bleed, but it's amazing to see. You've seen these solo YouTube videos of here's Paul McCartney in this thing. I just recently saw a can you identify these 18 Beatles songs just from the bass line? I thought, oh yeah, that'll be easy. I got like 3 or 4. And so which I surprised myself at how bad I did, because I'm familiar with all of these things, but the bass lines are so counterpunctual and counterintuitive. It was an education in itself. So this allows this level of soloing each piece in place in the room where it wants to be, as learning about organization and this. So it's exciting. I'm just thrilled to be.
Yeah. So the best part of all of this is that right now, everybody right now on this call is welcome to sign up for an invite so you can play with this and try it out for yourself. At some point in time in the next couple of weeks, we're going to do 2 things. We're going to turn on automation. We're going to turn on the paywall, but even when the paywall turns on, it will just be day 1 of a 30-day free trial. So I encourage everybody to throw everything you got at it and play with it and let us know what the experience is like for you. And we would love to hear your thoughts on it. You can find more about MixCubed and Immersion at www.immersion.net. And the URL for MixCubed, Paul, is?
Why don't you put them in the chat, actually? Just copy and paste.
Okay. Got it. I'm sorry?
I think it's in the meeting notice too.
Yep. So it's in the meeting notice, and I will drop this in. I will drop the main URL into the chat. Paul, if you could drop in the MixCubed URL, that would be great. MixCubed.com.
Yeah, and there's a free sign up if you haven't gotten that, and we will. We have to invite you in, but I've taken note of everybody that's been on the call, and anybody that's been on this call will get an invite. So just send us an email with the name that you use here in some way. That would be great.
There's a question of any plan for width control of mono sources, and my answer to that is make it stereo, double it up, then you have it completely set up. So
well, so there's something antithetical about that technique. It's worth experimenting with it both ways, because you may find that an inherently mono source is happier being an inherently mono source than it is as a paired stereo track. Mac Perkins also asked a question: how fine is the spatial resolution? And I don't know that there's a good way to quantify that, Paul. Maybe you can help me with that.
The answer to that is much more than your brain can ever hope to distinguish.
Thank you for that, JJ. I didn't know the answer to that one myself.
Well, the degree to which angle and distance are measured is much more accurate than the perceptual system.
Good. So good. Well, look, on that, I want to thank the PNW chapter of the AES for giving us the opportunity to speak to you about MixCubed tonight and to tell you about what we've been up to. And hopefully this is the first of many interesting conversations that we'll have. I want to thank all the people who asked questions. Again, if you want to sign up, please just go to the sign up pages, which are available at mixcubed.com. And for more information about our company, go to our admittedly stealthy website, www.immersion.net. MixCubed is MixCubed.com.
I will show a quick little screenshot of what happens when you get to the site. So here it is at mixcubed.com, back here in the right-hand corner. Just here, click here if you want more information, and that will sign you up into the, you'll just put in your email address there, and we will be able to send you an invite, and then you'll be able to click on this invite and put in your code and have access to us as we're early in. Love to have everybody on. We got plenty of processing to do it too. So,
so good. So Greg, I think it's back to you. And thank you again, AES chapter. It's great to be with the chapter, and it's great to be part of the home team. Go AES PNW.
After 20 years, I'm off the board for a month.
For a month.
JJ, what,
Or a
fired?
year. No, somebody said they wanted the thing, so I said, you take it.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jim, Paul, and JJ for the awesome and very thought-provoking and yeah, really awesome presentation. I look forward to checking out MixCubed. At this point in time, we'd like to invite all the participants who would like to stick around and say hello and introduce themselves to do so. I've asked Steve Turnage to help us out with calling on names. So, and he has agreed. So thank you so much, Steve.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to pass the mic over to Steve, and Steve's going to help introduce you all.
So if you can, throw your videos on, and hopefully I'll be able to see you. I'm just going to start in my world. And we know Jim already, and we know Paul already. Dave, quick, say hi. You got to unmute, of course. So this will be.
Hi.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Steve Ball.
Hi, everybody. Steve Ball, musician, engineer, former colleague of JJ's at Microsoft. And I'm really happy that this, both technology and aesthetic, is starting to become part of how we think about how music works for playback. So great work, Paul. And
You've got some excellent sample generators behind you.
Yes. And I've got an impending Red Book release of the immersion mixes we did at SkyMuse. And I want to go back with Steve Turnage and take some of the stems that we have from another bit of our content and do a full release of that as well.
You know, there's one thing I didn't mention that I should mention, Steve, just to kind of put all this in perspective. You can throw an ion mix to vinyl.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Good luck trying to do that with other multi-channel formats.
For sure.
We're happy. We're happy. We are very happy on vinyl. We're fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Rod Evanson.
Yeah, I'm Rod Evanson, life member, AES, and double E here in the Portland, Oregon area, doing recording in the Portland area. So,
outstanding. Bob Neal, who is away from, and Rob, there you go, good. Bob Neal, if he's nearby, I see an empty kitchen, which is, you know, inviting, but let's go on. Janie Wallach, please.
Yeah, when bands used to play live, which I hope they're going to be doing soon, I used to record them, which I hope I'm going to be doing again soon for the first time in over a year.
Cool. Yeah, we're all looking forward to that.
Oh, yes.
Joseph Anderson. It's the
there we go. It's the
fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess job at University of Washington in DXR. Scary Louie is one of my colleagues in the School of Music. Job title research scientist. I'm the author of the Ambisonic Toolkit, which, I mean, as everyone wants to. Oh, let me go to send to everyone. So software package to do ambisonics. So I think everything is ambisonics. And JJ says no, but it's a way to see the world.
It's a start.
We had a good AES meeting there too a couple years ago, as I recall.
It's a good start.
Yeah, nostalgia and immersive audio go well together.
Yeah, and actually, our toolkit has just got HOA at the beginning of the year. So
can you define that, please?
Higher order. So we can go up to however many channels you want, depending upon the math of the library that we're using. So it seems to work fine up to 10th order.
Nice.
So anyway.
Okay, Bob Neal, you were gone. Now you can introduce yourself. But you have to unmute, just like usual. Welcome back, by the way. And this, there you go.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
Good.
Introduction.
Yeah, my name is Bob Neal. I live in South Park. I have a DAW. I've been playing music my whole life. I started out with New England Digital in New Hampshire, and then I moved out here, worked for Mackie Designs for about 10 years as an inventory guy, helped him go to China. And I've always had an interest in audio. I had a 16-track studio back in New Hampshire. It's a thrill that you guys open this up. I mean, because it's like a dream for me to hear this stuff, and I have a great interest in it. So whoever's had the idea that everybody can look at this and be in on your meetings and your presentations, it was a great thing.
I would blame Dan Mortensen for that. He was our pioneer for sure.
Bob, I have to shout out something. So this takes me back to about 1983, 84. Being in the New England Digital office at 1650 Broadway and watching the first direct-to-disc recording stuff and the first musical application, arguably, of the digital deck VT700 display. But man, does that take me back. Seeing Sting at the Palladium, sponsored by Sinclair, I remember that show. That was a great one.
Well, I had a gig that night. I couldn't go to the show. It was crazy. And I was an inventory guy, not an engineer, but yeah, I missed that one.
Oh, man, I had a whole bunch of flashbacks of conversations with the always irritating and pointy Griff McCree. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's go on. Let's go on. Christian Heilman.
All right, testing the unmute button.
It works. Yes.
Hi there. My name is Christian. I am a live, is that still a live sound engineer and a studio engineer as well. Definitely fascinated by the idea of surround, spatial, whatever works really. Yeah, so I'm very fascinated by all this. Keeping an eye.
It's Rich Fields, and I'm excited about Christian's skills. He's one of my favorite mixing engineers. Mike Metesky.
I was just typing something saying I've got to go. But,
well, then go. It's your turn.
Mike Metesky, owner of Opus 4 Studios, musician. You see one or two, or maybe many more, have attended UW or are teaching at UW, where I got my doctorate in music. Just a comment. This is a really interesting meeting. It is very possible, if the stars align, this could be a major component in the future of music production. Very interesting stuff. Thank you so much for the meeting.
The nicest thing.
I want to add. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say the nice thing about it is we can say it's the present of music production now. It used to be the future. Go ahead, Jim.
And I just want to add, to punctuate that with your lips to God's ears.
That's where he keeps his lips usually, actually, as I understand about Mike. Jess Berg.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jess Berg. Honored to be here and a part of this chapter. I've been primarily a live sound engineer for the last 17 years, but also done some cool studio stuff, some broadcast stuff. Currently in Bellingham, Washington, and doing the dance of whether I'm actually going to go back out on the road this fall. There's things happening, or if I'm going to put my energy into other things, but all is well, and I'm really happy to be here. And tonight was fascinating. I was really excited about this one, and I'm excited to learn more and check it out. So thanks.
And
everyone.
now you're a committee member, so you have obligations.
I know, but it's an honor, and I'm just so happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
It's very good to have you, Gary Louie.
Hi, I'm Gary Louie. I'm the secretary of the Pacific Northwest section, long suffering, and my usual day jobs at the University of Washington School of Music, where I'm the general audio guy, the only audio guy, really. I'm a life member of the AES, and I am also on the tellers committee for the AES, which means there's an election going on now for worldwide AES positions. And if you are a member, higher than associate, you have voting privileges, and I encourage you to look at the ballot and cast it before the voting period ends on July 2nd. I'll put the URL in the chat.
Thank you, Gary. Lauren Schwedler.
Thanks, Steve. I'm Lawrence Swedler. I'm the director of the music and sound design programs at DigiPen Institute of Technology here in Redmond, a longstanding member of the AES PNW section, which I've got to say, this is, I don't know, it's like 8 years for me now, or maybe longer, when Steve roped me into what felt like roped me into this back in the beginning. And it's been probably one of the coolest things I've ever done. And this meeting tonight is an example of it. Paul and Jim and, oh my gosh, Steve, and who am I missing?
JJ.
JJ,
the little guy.
you guys. So I got one of the tours of Immersion way back when you were still building the walls to see. I'm just flabbergasted. So thank you so much for opening this up to the world. I'm as excited as I think anybody here about the implications. I think they're pretty cosmic. And anyway, you guys are just the greatest. So thanks so much.
It's a dimensional enhancement in every single way. Greg Dixon, have you introduced yourself enough, do you think? Because you're next on my list.
I'll say a few words about myself. I'm an audio educator, and I work with Lawrence over at DigiPen, where I'm assistant professor of music and sound design. And so my focus is mostly in composition and sound design for interactive applications, but in particular video games. So that's kind of the research and work that I do these days. And I also serve as the chair of our section. And I'm like Lawrence, I also am very happy to be a part of this. So thanks.
Good to have you. And congratulations on your new position. That's your old position still.
Thanks, Steve.
Micah Hayes.
Yes, hello. I'm also an audio educator. I'm new here. I just moved here last summer to take a job at Seattle Pacific University, running their music production program, the professor of music technology, and love it. I had spent the last 12 years teaching at UT Arlington in Texas, and then originally from Ventura, California. So it's nice to be back on the West Coast.
Good to have you.
Thanks. Excited about getting involved and being part of the committee and stuff. So voted unanimously, so that's great. So
and at some point we're probably going to be able to share a room again in the future, and we'll probably still have Zoom going so that we keep our global reach that we've gained here. But that's going to be, it's already weird even just in the grocery store, but that's fine. That's temporal. Rick Chen.
Hi, I'm the webmaster of the section and a life member, and been involved with the section since day one. What do I do? Let's see. I'm an escaped live sound engineer, and now I've moved to doing location recording because there's a lot less lifting involved. And I also do electronic design work. That's it.
No windows.
No. Oh, don't do lights. Don't do ladders. Don't do video. For good reasons.
Perfect. Okay. Rob Baum.
Hi, JJ and Paul. That was really interesting. I think this really could be quite interesting stuff that you've got. Hopefully they'll go wide. I myself, I'm an engineer. I do a lot of test and measurement and development of hardware, especially headphones. So the application for headphones is really interesting because everybody seems to listen on headphones these days, and they are of fairly low quality usually. Anyway, good meeting, guys.
Thank you. Katie Gray.
Hey there. I'm a Pacific Northwest committee member and I live out of Seattle. I do acoustic consulting and I'm also a musician. So yeah.
What's your instrument, Katie?
The violin and a little bit of the viola was a good one to pick up.
Yeah, it just has to do with size, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Angie.
I actually think it's technically harder to play, but don't tell professional violinists that.
Yeah, because I think that Mike, who may be gone, is a cellist. So we've got
Right.
all sorts of wood. Angie.
Angie Dane, I assume?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Hi. Great. Hi, I am Angie. I'm from Seattle, newly elected to the committee, and I'm super excited to be involved. I teach audio engineering at North Seattle, and I am an assistant at Earwig Studio. I just graduated the UW audio production certificate as well this year, so I'm pretty excited.
Thank you and congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Joe Carter.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh. Okay, well, I live down here in Los Angeles area, and I actually knew Jim Johnston from back when we served on the MPEG committee. That's how I first met up with him and respected him very much for what he did to the MPEG committee for the audio subcommittee. Anyway, I worked at Disney for many years, designing software for the shows and rides at the Disney theme parks as a Disney Imagineer. I was also in feature animation designing some audio software, and I am past chairman and secretary of the of the AES LA section here in Los Angeles.
Excellent. We're so glad you could join us.
Yes, and I live life below 20 kilohertz, definitely, but I also spent after Disney quite a few years in motion picture post-production, working on video workflows, getting content out of the Hollywood studios and out into digital distribution.
Outstanding. Mac Perkins.
Well, thanks for the presentation. This thing is very interesting to me because I've always been intrigued at what happens when you start mixing microphones and the cancellations and all the weirdnesses and being able to place them in a field and have it sum properly sounds really exciting to me.
This is the modern world that we've read about. Thomas Hannon. Oh, carry on, Jim.
I just wanted to just interject with one thing that we forgot to mention. Even if you decide not to use MixCubed for any of its immersive or automation features, if you simply use it as a summing box, it's ridiculous because the processing horsepower, I mean, we're doing everything to orders of resolution far beyond the DAW. Just the summing by itself is worth experimenting with. So I encourage everybody to give that a shot as well.
It keeps on coming. That's the other thing that we touched on is that most revolutionary releases of technology are the end result of everything that the company has to give out and say, hey, look at this. In this case, it's the opposite. This is the tip of the iceberg. I've been following these guys for 6 years. They have a patent portfolio that's insane, and they had to winnow it down to get this little teeny bit out, and everything is just going to grow from here. It's already designed. So it's a really weird reversal of typical technology releases, and I'm super happy about that. Thomas Hannon, sir.
Thomas Hannon. I'm in the Austin section in Texas, and I'm a life member, and I think this product is absolutely fantastic. Thanks.
I would agree. Thank you. Don Hartley.
Hello, my name's Don Hartley and I live in Las Vegas. I'm a audio engineer and not currently a member, but plan on becoming a member in the next few months. And I want to say thank you for the great information and the wonderful hang. Thank you.
That's that actually should be on our banner. Great information, wonderful hang. Then you hang the banner. Okay, let's go to Joe Grisso, sir.
Hey, I'm Joe Grisso. I've been an electrical engineer for just over 2 decades now, but I've only been an AES member for 6. I'm currently focusing in the VR AR space, but my passion outside of that is designing synthesizers. That's it.
He does those things. JD Wong.
Hi there, I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm a musician. I'm a record producer / audio engineer. Well, wear a lot of hats, do a lot of things nowadays. I'm also the president of our AES Malaysia section here in Kuala Lumpur. So thank you very much for holding this meeting and the presentation.
Of course, I have to ask, what time is it there?
It is it's 10 minutes past 11 in the morning.
Oh, well, that's not as bad as I thought. Congratulations. That's good, because we have some of these other people that say, yeah, it's it's coming up on 5 a.m., but there you go. Okay, as we go, Stephen DeVore.
You forgot to mention that it is also tomorrow in Malaysia.
Ah, that's right. The tomorrow makers. Go ahead,
Hello.
Stephen.
How's it going, guys? Long time no see. Hey, I've been
Well,
doing.
I'm glad you're in the tropics.
Yeah,
At
I've been
least.
doing filmmaking for the past 6 or 7 years, and my first year was actually doing audio engineering because I do have a degree in audio. I also got the UW certificate that they were giving. It used to be called sound production, but now they're calling it audio production. And I got all these other certificates from like the recording workshop and other places too. So, but I'm still trying to find my place in this world.
Well, you're still trying to find your bandwidth. Ah, okay. Stephen, you're
It was
locked.
great.
There you are. Now you're back. You were gone for a while. And you still are. But good to have you. So we could circle back if there's more, but otherwise, we'll go ahead. Dan Mortensen.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks you guys for this good meeting. I've theoretically been a live sound engineer for the last 1.5 years, and today and tomorrow, I've got my first live gig, pure live gig, since February of last year. And
wow.
It was like riding a bike. It was pretty cool. I had a great time, and I pretty much remembered stuff, which was good. So there you go. Thanks for coming.
Outstanding. Okay, I'm getting duplicates here. Stephen Ahrens. Are you there? Stephen, what's up? You might not be available. How about David Siegel? And we're boiling down here because some of these people could be without microphone and camera. That's perfectly fine. I could introduce that, and that's everybody that's left, 27 out of 50, congratulations to y'all. I'm a mastering engineer and circuit board designer. I don't know if anyone plays with Pictronics guitar pedals. I've done most of those, and I've got like 5 of them right now that I should be doing. And I master a lot, and I wrote a couple of books on mastering. And I'm sort of a futurist and have been. We had a group called Northwest Cyber Artists in 1992 to 95 that talked about future human interfaces, and all of the things that are here now, we've waited a very long time for. And now with the immersion, what I call a Mixtool, is we're in post-scarcity, we're in post-singularity. Everything changes in a synergistic manner because not just one thing is changing. This allows so many things to change. So it's lovely to still be alive after last year, first of all, and the 3 decades we all lived last year gives us a lot more perspective on our maturation. So it's great to have you guys up and out. And I just want to give my personal thanks to everybody here for being here. Did I miss anybody? Because if I missed anybody, they can pop up and say you missed me. I saw, like Bob Olson was here. I saw some great people that snuck out the back door the Zoom door. Greg, you around? Unmute, sir. And thank you, thank you.
Right. Thanks a lot, Steve, for your help emceeing there at the end. At this point in time, we're all done. And so it's time to conclude the meeting. I'd like to give thanks one last time to our presenters this evening, Jim, JJ, and Paul. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I'd like to thank the committee members of the Pacific Northwest AES section for all their help and organization and executing and implementing the meeting tonight. I couldn't have done it without your help. Thank you. I'd also like to extend a welcome greeting to all of our new committee members and returning committee members. I'm excited to plan with you an exciting year. We typically take August off. I'm sorry, we usually take July off and maybe even August too. So we'll definitely be taking a break next month, and we'll not plan on having a meeting. So I don't have any new meetings to announce, but I'm really excited to work with the committee to plan and implement exciting meetings with you all next year. And like Steve said earlier, I hope that we can get back together and to hang out and talk with one another in person. I'm hoping that we can get there at some point, but for the people that have been joining us along the way, especially from outside of Washington, across the United States and around the world, please know that we still will plan to make these meetings as open as we possibly can. So we'll still continue to invite you and welcome you to these meetings in the future, no matter what. So thanks again, everybody. I hope that you all stay well, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you once our break is over.
Thank you, Greg. Good night, everybody.
Audio.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Happy
Thank you.
summer. Good to
Good
see
night,
you.
Seattle.
You too. Have a
See you
good
next
one.
time.
Good night.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.